Hey, I'm James from Soaking Dead BBQ, and over the past 3 weeks, I've lost 9 pounds eating almost exclusively barbecue to prove the point that when it comes to New Year's resolutions, our grill doesn't need to be the enemy, but instead can be part of the solution. So let me start with the obvious and first. I am not a doctor and have no medical training whatsoever, so always consult with a physician for any long-term health plans. I'm just a guy like many of you. When I left school and came into my adult life over the past 20 years, I've gained 70 pounds from my college self and wanted to start implementing some healthier changes. As once I got into my 40s, the doctor started ramping up the severity of the escalation note saying, James, you need to make some changes for the long haul. So that's all this is. I mean, no shame or judgment, no matter where you are in this journey. I'm super passionate about grilling, and for me, I just can't sustain any sort of diet approach or health changes where my grill isn't a part of that. So I'm going to go through 3 chapters with you. First, I'm going to go over my approach over the past 3 weeks. Now, why not a month? I just lost track of time. I'm like, oh, New Year's is coming up. So I didn't start this until the first week of December, and I obviously need to finish just a little bit before New Year's in order to get this video out in time. But I'm going to go through my approach in terms of when I weighed in 3 weeks ago and was 232 point something pounds versus 3 weeks later at 223 pounds, getting that 9-pound weight loss. What did I do? What are some of the small little changes that I made behind that result? Second, just having tried this in previous years and gone maybe a little bit too extreme and then not been able to sustain that. Some tips and things that have been really helpful for me, best practices that I've learned to share if you find yourself starting a New Year's resolution right now, and maybe it gives you some advice or tips and tricks to help get even more results, whatever your goals may be. And last but not least, I'm going to go through a collection of recipes as well as some ideas and methods when using your grill. Since these are scattered across hundreds of videos, I recognize it's difficult. So to maybe give you some inspiration, some are a little older, some are a little newer, I'm going to put a couple categories across poultry, beef, pork, seafood, and things like that. Some of my favorite recipes that in partnership with these tips can help set you up for success. And that's some of the recipes that I relied on over the past 3 weeks. So my approach is pretty simple. I like to keep things simple. There's 4 steps to what I've implemented for my approach. And the first one has to do with what I've tried a couple years ago. If you've been around for a long time, you remember a couple years ago, I had peaked when I started my channel at 250 pounds, and I went crazy with a keto diet, and I lost in a year nearly 50 pounds. But as you can tell doing this video, we've gained some of that back. It's amazing how a couple stressors, life events, work or otherwise, can impact your mental health and make it really difficult to sustain some of those things. Plus, I learned for step number 1 or tip number 1 here is to avoid some of the fad diets. So for me, I opted to do the keto diet, and in that year, I had great results. But what I learned after that year was done, I went to a gym before and after, and they have a machine that measures your body mass along with your muscle density and fat density and all these other things. Part of the keto diet, while I was losing weight, I was also losing muscle mass, and nearly 15% of my weight loss came from muscle mass. So keto, in some ways, you're starving yourself and then eating your own muscles to achieve that weight loss. Now, I'm sure there are people far more qualified to help prevent that from happening, but that was not an experience that I'm looking to repeat. So my first method was to skip the fad diets, and even though it's encouraging right out of the box to get amazing results where you're seeing 7, 8, 9, 10 pounds in a week, every bit of reading that I've done from any association says your normal range should be in the 1 to 3 pounds, which is exactly what I based my goal on 3 weeks ago, is to do about 3 pounds a week. And we achieved, thankfully, just barely at the 9 pounds lost in 3 weeks. The second pillar of my approach here has been to try intermittent fasting. Now, there's people all over going kind of crazy extremes, but for me, I take a pretty basic approach, which is anything that I want to achieve for my weight loss, it really just comes down to calories in versus calories out. So if I have a set amount that I can eat in a day, if I divide that across 3 meals, that might mean I have a not so enjoyable breakfast, a not so enjoyable lunch, and maybe not so enjoyable of a dinner. By skipping breakfast, I can back end more of the same calories into lunch and especially dinner, and actually go on as if there's next to no change at all, and still be losing weight and enjoying my dinner. There's other benefits I won't get into here today. I'm not a medical expert on intermittent fasting, but for me, that's what I've done. I've skipped breakfast. Never really been a huge fan of that. I love coffee, things in the morning, and I don't miss it. And that just means that I can continue on with lunch, or more importantly for me, my dinner meal plans, without having to make hardly any change. Third in my approach here is less liquid calories. As enjoyable as those may be, substituting for more clear calories and making sure that I'm enjoying what I'm eating versus drinking. If you add up what some of these enjoyable beverages are packing on in a daily or a weekly basis, this can make running any sort of calorie deficit a real challenge. And so for me, especially over the holidays when I did this, keeping an eye on the amount of calories being consumed by a liquid versus what I'm eating made a really big difference. And the fourth one, super simple here as well, but I set a goal, didn't quite achieve it, but I was trying to do about 10,000 steps of walking each day. A couple articles I came across recommend that. So whether you have a pedometer or a smartwatch or things like that, setting a goal and keeping track of it on a daily basis is something that makes this much easier to achieve. If you look past at the month, I'll put my data up here from my watch, you can see I achieved my goal about 75% of the time. And that's kind of part of the approach here, of things that I've learned, is when you have a bad day, a travel day, or a holiday party, or just not possible to hit these goals every single day, is not giving up, throwing in the towel and saying, that's it. Just take it what it is, enjoy that day, and reset the next day and move on. And it has very little impact, at least I found historically, on your end goal. So don't get discouraged if you happen to have a flu or a business trip or things like that that just make it impossible to continue on with these goals. Just pick it up when you're right back at home, and you'll be able to continue on just as you were. Tips to keep it up. Sticking with the theme of 4, I put together 4 tips that I found worked really well for me in order to make this more of a sustainable endeavor. And the first one is setting goals, but not setting impossible goals. I mentioned earlier, when I'm the type of person, it's like when I want to do something, I go full bore. So I say I want to, lose some weight. I want a really aggressive timeline. Kind of maybe it's that male oriented mentality where it's like, we're gonna get this done right now. That doesn't work, at least for me, I found, with a sustainable fitness plan. So setting a goal of, I want to lose 20 pounds and I want to do it in a week, I think, based on my experience and everything I've read, you're setting yourself up for failure. So aligning your goals to what most medical journals say is healthy, like that 1 to 3 pounds. This is realistic. So build your goal off of what is realistic. Giving yourselves unsustainable goals or unachievable goals is only going to lead, if you think like me, to trying it for a little bit and getting discouraged and giving up. Second is enlist the help of a friend or a family member. Doing this in partnership with someone to check in, go for a walk, especially if it's one of those hard days at work and you're having the difficult time getting motivated to go out and do your 10,000 steps. If you're like me, many times I would come home exhausted after a full day at work, and I look at my steps and I'm maybe 1,000, 2,000 steps, as I have an office-based job. And now the idea of tackling 8,000 steps after making dinner, getting the kids to bed, just becomes that much more daunting. By having a family member or a friend committed to go for a walk with you or journeying along, this makes that so much easier. And I mentioned earlier, again, not picking impossible goals. One of the ones I did with friends was a challenge called 75 hard, but this is cold showers. Drink, I forget how many, like a liter of water or something crazy. There was a bunch of water, crazy amount of exercise, inside exercise, outside exercise. And while having a friend helped, that was still, again, just coming back to an impossible goal. And as people started to drop off and not able to continue it, it put even more pressure on yourself. So getting some sustainable goals with friends and family to journey along with you makes this so much easier. Number 3, I hate, but it works, which is planning ahead. You say lists, I almost get like a type reaction. I hate planning ahead, and even the fact that I had to take notes so I don't lose my train of thought for this video is just like, it irks me under the skin. But planning ahead with meal preparation makes a big difference. And I know my wife is probably inside going, I told you so, but yes, she's right. Planning ahead and meal preparation in partnership with any goals that you set for yourself in the new year just makes it that much more possible to sustain things. Like the week gets busy, kids programs, if you're like me, we have 2 young kids, get busy, work gets busy. And by the time you reach Wednesday at 7 o'clock and you're hungry, this is when, for me, the bad decisions get made. It's like, I haven't thought of anything, I don't have anything ready, don't have any groceries, and fast food it is. And so having a meal plan and preparation goes great with some of the recipes and ideas that I'll share below, as well as if you do a large weekend cook, this can also come into preparation. And so a few of the ideas I'll mention is doing things like a brisket or a pulled pork, and then vac sealing those into individual portions, and you can reheat these in a breeze and enjoy your barbecue midweek, even if it means you're coming home late from work, 7, 8 o'clock at night, and you don't have the time to start everything from scratch. You can still continue to enjoy grilled meals all week long without the normal effort of starting up your grill and waiting for something to cook and reach your desired internal temperature. Last but not least is keep doing what you love, but channel that focus and vigor on things that you might be dedicating. For me, that's perfecting a brisket on my Kamado Joe and learning from an offset smoker. That's why I picked one up, so I could benchmark things. And I've been going crazy trying to close the gap from a brisket that I turn out on a Kamado style grill to what you can get on an offset grill. But if you watched any of the famous kind of barbecue shows, Netflix, Amazon, or wherever they're hosted nowadays, and they're doing these competitions, you notice none of these competitions are just about brisket. There's always sides and desserts. And this, for me, is a kryptonite weakness. Often in our family, I'm making the hero part of the meal, and Sarah is turning out some amazing sides. In part why we created the website, so she can share more of those side dish recipes. But if you can connect that energy that you have for turning out the perfect brisket to challenging yourself to learning some great sides, this can be just as rewarding. And I've had a great time trying to figure out how to get amazing grilled veggies or bacon Brussels or asparagus, you name it, a whole bunch of side dishes that turn out really good and can be enjoyable. So make your grill part of the solution, part of the challenge. It'll keep it fresh, entertaining, and in line with whatever goals that you've set for yourself for the new year. So onto my last and final chapter, which is just going through a laundry list of ideas. If you don't have time, you got to go right now. I'll put a link down to the website below, and I'll index these by kind of protein category. But these are just to give you some inspiration and ideas in terms of maybe something you haven't tried on your grill, and or some of those cook ahead meals that you can make on your weekend and then backseal, save them, and serve them with very low effort midweek. So in no particular order, let's go through a couple, starting with chicken. It's one of the favorite recipes I discovered this year. I met some friends at a festival that make their own hot sauce, and they travel the Caribbean islands and are specialty in making jerk flavors. And so jerk chicken was a video that they taught me how to make and get as close to what I've ever had this side of Jamaica, and it was absolutely phenomenal. Not only can this be a great healthy meal, but if you make a couple chickens, since there is a 2-day marinade involved, make 2 chickens and then save some of that chicken for sandwiches or things at lunch, work, dinner meals midweek. You can save that and again cut down on the effort to keep the grilling going all week long. Sticking with chicken, another couple good ones that we absolutely love. So Alabama chicken, that was in my chicken 101 video. This is a winner every time that we serve it up. So that is a good one. Chicken shawarma is a great one, not just for being able to enjoy that day. It saves really well, and some of those flavors I almost think intensify overnight after you reheat them. So that is a really good one for reheating, along with I'll put my rotisserie chicken 101 video if you want a couple tips from beginner to advanced. There's varying degrees of complexity. They all work really good, so you're just splitting hairs in terms of getting the exact flavor profile that you want. Chicken souvlaki and some pickle brine chicken are 2 other ones that I love, either for being part of your main meal that you're cooking right now and adding a little bit of a healthier spin to it, or they also save really well and reheat great the next day. Moving into pork, there's a couple options. Now the first one, you might think health goals and pulled pork and ribs, they don't really fit, but there's so much that you can do. Pork reheats perhaps better than almost any other protein. It comes back nearly 99% as good. So whether you make it on the weekend and you want to continue enjoying it over some other things, whether it's a salad, Chef Eric I saw did a recipe called blue smoked slaw, where you actually smoke an entire cabbage hollowed out and you put some olive oil with garlic in there. I found mixing some leftover pulled pork into that gives you the taste of barbecue as well as a healthy helping vegetables, and you almost don't even know it. So there's plenty of things that you can do with leftover pulled pork and ribs and still continue to enjoy them, because again, as I mentioned earlier, it's really calories in, calorie out, so complementing that with some other parts of the meal means you can still continue to enjoy some of my favorite grilled smoked foods. A couple other ones that are unconventional I shared a couple years ago, but this is a bourbon glazed bacon wrapped pork tenderloin is absolutely amazing. porchetta. If you're able to find this, the one I found, they're always in Costco. The only downside with those is they often, or never, I've seen them come with skin on, so you can make your own. That's something I need. It's on my list of videos to do in the new year, so make sure you're subscribed for when that comes out, as well as one of my favorites I did very, very early on in the channel, so forgive the video editing has come a little bit of a long ways since then, but I absolutely love this recipe. I went to a work event in California and we got to go to a chef school for the day, and this is a recipe that they taught me, which was sour cherry tart reduction over pork tenderloin. It is absolutely fantastic. Anytime we've ever served this, people just go on and on and on, and this was the one recipe I made sure I did not lose in my suitcase on my way back home from California. Moving into beef, the same thing goes I mentioned for pork, whether it's a brisket 101. I'll also include my brisket leftovers, so there's 5 ideas I did not too long ago that you can reheat brisket. So if you vac seal it up at the end of your cook, whatever's left, you can put these into meal packages and make that a real breeze. But 3 lesser known ones, buried way back a couple years ago in the video archive. I make these all the time, don't necessarily record them, especially if it's one that I've done a couple years ago, but these 3 still are a regular staple around our household, even if the videos are getting a couple years old. But that's one is a picanha with a lemon zest kale along with bacon Brussels sprouts. That whole meal just comes together. You're getting a little bit of steak along with some flavor-packed grilled sides that are absolutely awesome. A wood-fired tri-tip, you don't need to do a wood-fired. I've done a couple different methods and it is absolutely amazing, but the chimichurri sauce pairs with that. So if you're doing a family style, which is how we often now do our steaks, you can still get an amazing quality steak, slice it up and share it across some friends and family, so you get to enjoy it without necessarily all the downsides of enjoying an entire tomahawk to yourself. And sticking with the tomahawk theme, but it's adding something like grilled scallops. I did these, I believe, on the soapstone or the cast iron half moon. I can't quite remember. It's a couple of years ago, but they work equally well on both. More recently, I've been relying on the soapstone. Moving into a few other options like seafood, we've got a couple here where I've got grilled salmon. So I think this is a double smoked salmon with prosciutto wrapped asparagus, full of flavor. And even if you're on the I don't really love fish scale, this is worth giving a try. It's really fantastic. If you like substituting, so when I was doing that keto kick, I didn't want to have rice, so making some grilled cauliflower rice. I did this by smoking it, I think it was about 40-50 minutes, breaking that cauliflower down into rice. It gets a lot of grilled and smoked flavor. In some cases, I actually prefer it more than rice. And the shrimp curry that we came back with a vacation maybe 10 years ago that I've shared on the channel before, absolutely love it. So that curry with cauliflower rice is a really good one. Lobster tails and tomahawk. Got lots of videos covering tomahawk, but not so many sort of showing how I like to split the tails and get a great doneness without overcooking something like lobster that can be sensitive to overcooking and becoming dry. And last but not least, grilled oysters. Now, the only thing that I didn't know in the video that I did for grilled oysters, and I had to shuck them, which I'm not a pro at, is they will pop themselves open if you start on the grill. So instead of going through the trouble of shucking, if this is something like I've never done it, toss them on, they'll start to pop, then you can shuck them for a fraction of the effort that I went through in my first time shucking experience in that oyster video. But those make up powerful, full of flavor, amazing grilled experience without a ton of calories to boot. So whether you're here as a regular viewer or you actually have a goal that you've set for yourself and you're curious for some ideas, thanks so much for the support. It means so much. I want to thank you for an amazing 2023. As we head into 2024, I'm going to be firing it up all January, February, and March, winter months. So I hope to see you around in future videos. That's it for today, though. I'm James from Soaking Dad BBQ signing off. Remember, don't be afraid to fire it up.